Hi, thanks for tuning in to our vertical feature series. In this segment, we're going to be discussing fire pit builds. To start off, there's a couple of different options and different ways you can go with this. The fire pit is probably the most asked and installed feature, vertical feature in the backyard. It's very versatile. In that I mean that whether it's a brand new build and you're incorporating one into the actual design, or whether you go back to an existing job and cut one in, or even as a standalone feature with nothing else around it, it's something that can be used in a couple of different ways. Before you get started, you want to check and kind of get some planning in order, especially logistics, and more so on the gas side. A lot of times there's a lot of codes that municipalities have that are different city by city, and so make sure you check with those first. Also, you want to plan out a couple of things, right? Because if you're going to be bringing in a gas line, most likely you're going to be trenching that in from the main, and so you need to know exactly where that's going to be located to give you a conduit line up into your pit. Also, you want to check whether or not open flames and things of that sort are going to consider needing any kind of covers or things like that on your job site. The three types of builds that you'll have will be a gas line, like we just talked about, where you pipe a gas line in. You have a switch on the outside with a valve to turn on and off. That also sometimes includes its own fire pan with a couple of different lines to give you a nice flame. The other is a hybrid of a gas and a wood burning, where you can, again, bring in that gas line and you bring it in with an igniter just to start the wood, and then you transition over to a full wood burning. And then last, and probably still the most popular, is just an old-fashioned wood burning unit. As you can hear that crackle of that wood when you get that going. So first off here, we're going to talk about the unit and the construction on the bottom side, right? So again, we're going to be using our same base that is in that patio area. Again, usually our gravel base. Again, as you've seen in all of our videos for anything vertical, we're always going to recommend our universal base plates, which you see here. I have lined up 12 in an area here. You can see on the screen. I've also lined the outline for my metal ring here. This is important with a fire burning unit. On the gas side, you're probably going to get rid of this and just go with that gas line into that fire pan. But again, with the wood burning, it's going to be imperative that you have some sort of shield to help protect that concrete on the outside edge from that heat intensity. Other thing to note too is sometimes if you have pavers coming right up to the unit, you might have to cut off the excess of this perimeter here for the universal base block, so you don't have any lippage or movement with the pavers. Moving forward over to the round piece here, what you'll notice is we're using our Brussels dimensional for both of these. Some of the units are a little bit more geared towards, let's say, a square or rectangle unit, and then some, like the Brussels taper here, have the angled pieces here, the tapered pieces, so that it gives you a nice circular unit without a lot of cutting. Again, you'll see that we use base plates here. This is a little bit different on this one. We use 14 here, but we offset an angle cut to be able to use both cuts next to each other and give us the base you see on the screen here. Again, I took that wood ring, plopped it down, and then gave us a dimension and a starting point for our first row. You'll see here we off-split our seam lines like on any other wall build. One thing to note here is we're going to be changing our adhesive from a standard concrete adhesive to a high heat adhesive. They do make them for concrete, so make sure you check that you're using the right one. Most of those are going to be rated to that 300, 400 degree rating. Most of the standard adhesives will liquefy, and so again, you might see some failure there if you don't use the correct adhesive. So again, remember to go ahead and get the right equipment and tools for the necessary build here. But again, very easy to start off. We're going to start with that first row. For this particular one, there's 18 blocks, and it works out where there are no cuts. We can get a nice tight fit, layer per layer. We got 3 rows here. Most of these fire pits are going to be in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 inches tall, so not a lot of height. The other thing you'll notice, like I said, with the square one, you might need to butt pavers up to it. So again, cutting off this excess might be something that needs to happen. The other thing too is you might bury a portion of it into the actual patio to give it an aesthetic look to it. And speaking of patios, you know, you do see some of these built on top of the pavers. We don't recommend it. There's a couple of things from a long-term stability standpoint that don't make sense there. It doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing on the actual install. And also a lot of those patios are pitched, and so your pit will kind of follow that pitch and not be a nice level unit. So again, our recommendation is always to cut these into your paving structure or area. Other thing too to note is going to be our coping pieces. You see some on the back of the square pit here, and then you see a couple of options here on your round pit. But first and foremost, if your wall is finished on all sides, like these two are, I have a tumbled surface to this, you can actually leave it as is with no coping, and that is considered a finished look. If you choose to put a coping, a couple of things to consider. One is, you see here, we have a rounded full nose option with our Brussels full nose piece, 12 inches long, 6 inches wide. And what that does, it gives me, once I make my cuts to get that nice circular fan to cover this pit, I get a nice overhang to the inside here and to the outside, which on a traditional wall build is okay. That's actually what I want. Here on the pit, one of the things that you'll notice is heat rising to the top is going to get trapped underneath this inside lip here. And so what happens over time, depending on the intensity of the fires that are being built, which are usually over what is intended for the pit, and the frequency, you might see this area here start to crack and fail on the inside perimeter here. That heat is getting trapped underneath and causing failure around the pit. One way to mitigate that is to move this completely up so that you're flush. The only thing is you'll see is we do get quite a bit of overhang on the front side. So in order to solve that, you can actually go ahead and make a cut on the back side to this, and now you see we get a nice overhang front side and we're flush back side here. If I move over to the side here, you'll see that in practice we've cut a few pieces, so you can see that nice flush area here where now our heat can go straight up and we mitigate that failure point, and we still get a nice overhang front side of this pit. Something that, again, just as you get more experience, we'll be able to kind of see on your own, but just to kind of accelerate that here, we've taken a couple pieces to show you. Again, a great feature to have in your job sites, something that definitely is asked for in the backyard. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.